With this season ended and the 162nd final game played, we're now looking into the postseason and where everybody will be landed. So we got to start with the wild card positions, and in the AL we have Tampa Bay and Oakland. I believe that Tampa Bay will win, but I don't think it's just as clear cut as that. We have to start with Charlie Morton, who has been incredible for Tampa and is over 190 innings pitched. He's sitting at a 3.05 ERA, and that is pretty good for what has been going on with the AL with over a 4.5 average ERA in the league. Shaun Nanea for the Oakland Athletics has been equally as good, but for not as long. He's only been playing since September 1st and has had 5 starts so far with a 1.21 ERA. That's pretty good, but considering that he's only played those 5 games and that's only coming off of an injury for the entire season and off season of last year, that's pretty concerning. You'd think he'd burn out pretty soon. Nanea isn't the type of player to continually be effective for that long, and with his stats showing for the previous years, it's pretty easy to see. Now, with Morton and Nanea having different sets of innings pitched and their different ERAs, they would even out pretty well, but Morton has been more dominant now than he was before, whereas Shaun Nanea is decent, but he didn't play before. With that being said, Morton has also been in the postseason 3 times since this season, where he's been in as early as 2013 with the Pirates, and then in 2017 and 18 he was with the Astros, where he actually won the World Series. He hasn't been the strongest, however, under the spotlight, but I believe that with his experience and his age, he will outpitch Nanea, and that will be the factor that will make Tampa beat Oakland. In the NL, we have the Milwaukee Brewers versus the Washington Nationals, and this one seems actually a lot more obvious than the AL wildcard, as there isn't any debate who will win. And it's unfortunate because this could have been a very heated matchup had the correct players been playing. Milwaukee's missing their MVP and possibly to be 2-time in a row winning MVP, Christian Yelich, with his right kneecap fracture, and with Washington's MVP, Max Scherzer, pitching that night. It's going to be a very tough game for Milwaukee to win, especially since they have their great pitcher, Brandon Woodruff, pitching, but he's just not nearly as good as Scherzer is. And with the batting lineup they have, they just are completely outmatched to Washington. So I don't think it would have mattered, especially where in the last game it was being a decider of the Cardinals or the Brewers making the wild card game. I think Washington would have won either way. Now, if Tampa Bay made it past the wild card, then they would be facing Houston in the ALDS. Now, this is one of those other no-brainers where Houston boasts 3 of the best pitchers in the league with Justin Verlander, Zach Greinke, and Garrett Cole. This is especially menacing considering they have an all-star batting lineup as well that includes Jose Altuve, George Springer, and Alex Bregman, and their all-star rookie Jordan Alvarez. Despite how surprising the Rays have been so far this year, we can't say that they could make it past, and it would be a shock now if they made it past the Astros. On the other side of the ALDS, we have the Minnesota Twins and the New York Yankees. This wouldn't surprise me, but I believe that the New York Yankees have this one in the bag pretty easily as well. This is kind of unfortunate for the Minnesota Twins because New York has this big setback with all the plaguing injuries they've had over this entire year and even into the postseason. They've remained dominant the entire time, and it's been pretty incredible how well they've been doing. Looking at the Twins' rotation, it's not nearly as good as the Yankees, and they could easily capitalize with 6 of their 9 batters being as incredible as they are. And even though the Yankees don't have the strongest pitching, with all the injuries and even with what they have now, some of the pitchers are not the strongest, they're still better than what the Twins pitching would do. And this is unfortunate because I believe that the Twins' batting is actually a bit better than the Yankees, especially with Sano and Torres. I'm sure that the pitching from the Yankees could suppress the Twins far better, and because of that, the Yankees have to win this one. Now over to the National League Division Series with Los Angeles and Washington. I don't think this was ever going to be any different. I don't think LA would have lost to anybody here, and I don't think it would have mattered which team it would have been in the National League. I believe that the Dodgers have some of the strongest pieces put together, and it's unfortunate that it's been so long that they haven't won a World Series. With the three aces in Hyunjin Ryu, Walker Buehler, and Clayton Kershaw, and the bats from Cody Bellinger, Jock Peterson, and Justin Turner, LA had no chance of losing this series, even with Washington's aces in Scherzer and Strasburg and Corbin. It didn't matter because I believe that the Dodgers has two great things for every one thing that Washington could ever bring to the table. In the series with St. Louis and Atlanta, I believe this will be one of the biggest upsets that will be in this entire postseason. I believe the Cardinals will beat Atlanta, and this isn't just because I'm biased and I'm a Cardinals fan, but I do find that with everything I've seen, that St. Louis will trump the Braves. The Cardinals' rotation is significantly stronger as it has Jack Flaherty, who has been on fire, earning only 10 runs in the past 14 games, which dates back to the All-Star break. And he consistently dropped his ERA, where he started the first half of his season with a 4.41, which has been above average on the ERA for the league, to now a measly 2.85, which is a league-leading ERA. They also have Mike Mikolas and Dakota Hudson, as well as Adam Wainwright, who has been their veteran in disguise, who has been some of the best pitching they've had. And they've been all taking their strides this year. Atlanta has also been pretty strong this year as well, with Mike Soroka as a hidden pitching gem he was unknown prior to this year. And now Acuna Jr., who is, I believe he's either runner-up or he will win Rookie of the Year, and Freddie Freeman, who has been leading the bats, but they just don't have enough pitching to close it versus the Cardinals. Now back to the American League with Houston versus New York. I believe Houston will win this, but it will be very tight. Houston's been pretty dominant this entire season, and they haven't lost their aggression at all since when they won the World Series back 2 years ago. Now the issue is that New York has all these injuries, and they may be held back because of that. And even though they've done so well, despite these issues they've had, I don't believe that will do enough for Houston and their stomping that they might do to New York. Houston has had very few injuries, and none of them have been nearly as major to the team, and it hasn't messed with their dynamic nearly as much as for New York. Now, this one might go to 7. I don't think it will, but it might, and it has to be Houston's to win. On the National League side of things for the championship series, this one seemed pretty clear-cut as well. Now, St. Louis had a strong season, but Los Angeles had an even better one. And every point I have for St. Louis being a good team, Los Angeles has it as well, but better. The Cards have Flaherty, Hudson, and Wainwright. The Dodgers have Ryu, Buehler, and Kershaw. The Cards have Ozuna, DeJong, and Goldsmith, and while LA has Bellinger, Turner, and Peterson. I just find it hard for them to be a winner in this way, and there's no other way for St. Louis to win, as they're just truly outmatched. And as much as I don't want it to happen with where I said I am a fan of St. Louis, it's going to be a sweep. It won't be anything else. It will just be 4 games, and that'll be it. I've read articles, and so far from everything I've seen, this isn't necessarily the favorites to become the World Series 2 teams to face off, but they're the favorites that people would love to see face off again. Now, I think this is the ideal matchup to me just because they were the best teams in each of the leagues, respectively, and it truly would be a greatest team versus greatest team, which I think could also become a best of 7 games to end in 2019. With that being said, this matchup is hard to evaluate because it could so easily go either way, and it's all up to how you feel about the matchup. I don't believe that Kershaw will have as many of the jitters and issues that he's had in the prior years in postseason, and I think he'll actually show up this time. And for me, I'd love to see LA to win. This would be nice for them as they could finally have one under the belt over the past 10 years when they've been in the postseason, been in the World Series as many times as they have been. And this would definitely help as they have Bellinger and a 3/8 rotation that is deadly at shutting down the bats. And at the same time, you could say that Houston should win as well because they have a above average lineup as well as their 3/8 rotation, which I would say is probably better than LA's. But the convenience for the Astros might be that they have home field advantage and the designated hitter for 4 games. But at the same time, Dodgers also have a designated hitter, which is always better because if you're not using a pitcher at the plate, that's always good help. So I think it will go down to 7 games most likely, but I'd love to see LA to win. What did you think of my bracket? Did you think that I got it all wrong? And is your bracket better? Let me know about yours down below. And subscribe and like for new content that I'll be having coming up.